Hey y'all, happy Sunday. Hope everything is going well for you and yours. This is the portion of the show where we let YouTube send out the notifications via social media, let folks know that the broadcast is getting ready to start. We'll sit here and we'll count down the next 2 minutes before I push that button and go live. If you happen to be watching this on replay, go ahead and scrub past this graphic until you see my smiling face. If you have any questions and you're joining us today in the live chat, feel free to go ahead and add those questions to the live chat now, and we'll get to them in due course during this live Q&A session. So, sit back, relax, grab a beverage, and we'll get going in about 30 seconds. Happy Sunday, y'all. Just sitting here bopping to that funky music. Yeah, right. Oh, man. It's been a heck of a week. I'm here to tell you what. And here's hoping things get a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. I have to ask, however, if you can hear the rain. This is Southern Oregon. It's raining like crazy. But I think this is the first live stream I've done from out here in the shed while it's actively raining. So I don't know if you can hear it or not. I can hear it through the headphones. But it's coming down. In fact, I may be here for a little bit after this is all done and over with. Because, I mean, it's like somebody standing on the roof with a fire hose. It's a little bit distracting, but I'll try not to get too sidetracked. Yeah, right. Okay, well, this is the live Q&A for the video that went live this morning, and that was the Shop Shed update. When that was actually, I started filming that, as you could probably tell by some of the footage. It was about, I would say, mid-August, something like that. So it was hotter than heck out here. I was sweating all over the place, but getting that floor prep took quite a while. And then scheduling the installer to come in and do the actual install, which I'm very glad I went ahead and did it that way. The price was right. It wasn't expensive. I had all the materials. He just provided the labor. And it took about 4 hours, all said and done. But it was pretty painless for me. But as I said in the video, the older I get, the easier it is for me to make the decision to go ahead and farm out a lot of the labor to somebody else. I mean, Chris Bray, he specializes in flooring, and he's local to me. I mean, he's like 6 blocks away from me, and he's, so he was able to get everything scheduled and get over here with his helper and get it all done. It took roughly 4 hours, as I said, for the whole thing. And that was accounting for drying time, because they came in, I had everything all ready and raring to go. And they fiddled and figured and trimmed things down to where he could make the joint and make the seam, because the G-floor material, they sell it in pre-cut sections. And they didn't have a section that was wide enough to go in one piece that wasn't about 40 feet long. And I just didn't need that. And it's pretty pricey stuff. I haven't gotten into costs or anything yet, but if you've gone to the link in the description and looked at the material I got, you can see it's pretty pricey stuff, but I wanted to do it one time and be finished with it. So I have no regrets in buying it. This is not sponsored in any way, shape, manner, or form. I paid cash, save up my pennies and bought the stuff myself. Didn't work with them or collaborate with them at all. And I don't have any regrets on buying it, but it is pretty pricey stuff. Before I get into the questions, I knew there were going to be questions on it, so I grabbed a piece of the scrap material. And this is what it is. They call it small coin, the pattern. And each one of these little circles here, you can see, is about the size of the tip of my index finger. Well, my not so nice finger. There we go. They're about 3/4 inch diameter, and it's a raised texture. You can see the texture on the top of each coin. And I did that because it is so wet here. I wanted something non-skid. And I've come in with wet feet wearing, my shoes or rubber flip-flops or something like that. And I have yet to slip or slide on this at all. It really is good quality stuff. If I have any issue with it at all, it is that you have to spend a little bit of extra time sweeping, because especially fine sanding dust and things like that, until I get dust extraction in here, which I don't have yet. You have to kind of sweep at it twice, because fine dust will get down in here in these spaces in between the coins. And then, it lends itself very well to vacuuming. And you can see the thickness of it. It is a laminated vinyl. You can't really get a good edge detail on this camera, but you can see how the pattern is embossed in the back as well. But it is laminated. It's like 3 layers thick. And it was actually designed for garages. And, but it's tough stuff. I mean, the installer, his major issue was the adhesive. The adhesive was very, very thick, but this was the adhesive that they recommended for their flooring. And it's expensive stuff too. It was over $100 and some odd for a 2-gallon bucket, and I have maybe a quart left of it. It doesn't necessarily have to be adhered down. It can be, they sell trim pieces for it that you can make just a big mat. And in fact, on their website, they show several instances where they have like one of these, a sheet of this rolled out, and then the edge trim piece is added to it, and like a Corvette parked on it or something like that. But I have no regrets. I wanted to do this once and be done with it. And I'll admit, I know this is a shop, and I know it's going to get filthy, and I know it's going to get dirty, but I actually, when I was shooting the video of me putting in the baseboards, I actually said, you know what, I need to mop this. And then I thought, wait a minute, it's a shop. What are you talking about mopping? So I didn't bother with it. But anyway, it's very good stuff. I have absolutely no regrets and no complaints. I have dropped things on it. Dropped a wood chisel the other day, and of course it landed point down, and I had to go back and resharpen it. But there's no apparent damage. I can't find the spot where I dropped that chisel. I have not had, like, the table saw plugged in back here. I move it around. I've not seen where the weight of the saw has dented it at all or made any marks. They do say in their website that if you put like you jack up a car, put a jack stand under it and lower the car onto that jack stand. If it has sharp feet, that can leave impressions, but I don't do anything like that in here. So I'm not really concerned with that. And I've spilt stuff on it and what have you, just in moving things in and out. And, I'm real happy with it. I mean, I have no regrets. So, I kind of alluded to further developments, as far as the shop is concerned. As I said, that was shot quite a while ago, and it took me a while to compile everything and get it put together. The CNC is in here. I mean, you can see one corner of it right here. It's in, it's plugged in, I have fired it up, I have moved it. I haven't run a project on it yet, but it does work. And what I'm going to do from here is I need to level the bed after I moved it and retram it and make sure everything is straight and square and what have you. I know that you don't have to make sure that for this type of router that the frame and the table is perfectly level. But the shed that I moved this out of, although it was a concrete floor, it was the surface of that concrete. I can't confirm it, but I think they troweled it with a chainsaw, because it is so wavy and bumpy. This table is twisted, and you measure from the floor to the corner of the table on all four corners, and no two numbers are the same. So it's got a pitch. The table is pitched up in the front. So if I were to try to surface the spoil board now, I would cut down into my aluminum T-track. So what I'm going to do is shoot a video on re-leveling this thing so that it's, for the most part, level, then retramming the router, then resurfacing the spoil board. So just to kind of show back and forth, the back and forth involved in moving a machine, because generally speaking, you build a machine or assemble a machine for one location. Well, when you change that location, things can get thrown off. So I will be getting into that. But again, that's a future video. Let me go up here, and we had some questions before. I'm not ignoring you all. I just need to find them. And we will get going here. Bill Stauffer says, excellent prep work for the flooring. My dad always said, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, where will you find the time to do it over? Well, thank you very much. That was probably my number one complaint in the Army, was how come we never seem to have time to do it right, but we always seem to find the time to do it again. I don't want to do this again. Some of my background is in construction. While I've not physically done all of it, I have seen enough of prepping floors for a sheet vinyl covering, a sheet vinyl floor, to know that you have got to do a lot of prep work and then put down a nice smooth underlayment for directly under the vinyl. And I had a couple people say, wow, you used enough staples. That was sure overkill. Maybe, but staples are cheap. But ripping up a floor and replacing it because something buckled is not cheap. So I'd rather use half a box of staples putting down the 5mm plywood and not have that issue. The other one was, why did I use 3/4 inch staples when I'm going through 5mm plywood into 3/4 inch wood? And the answer to that is simply, I didn't want the ends of the staples to go through that plywood subfloor, because that's a penetration that can begin to corrode, number one. And number two, over time, as you walk on it, there's that downward give that will eventually loosen a fastener. And that's also why I went back and screwed down the plywood versus just leaving it nailed down, because the plywood subfloor in this is pressure treated plywood, pressure treated Douglas fir. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with pressure treated plywood or not, but it comes to you soaking wet from the chemicals they treat it with, and you have to let it dry. Well, we assembled the floor and everything was great. And when it dried, it shrunk in width and in length by about 1/8 of an inch, and it opened up some big gaps. Well, as it shrunk, it also loosened up those nails. So I used that square nose shovel that I showed in the video to go through all the nail lines, find those loose nails, and pull out the ones I could, drive in the ones I couldn't pull, and then went back and screwed it down. So walking on it would be less likely to cause a nail to lift up and create a bump in my subfloor. So that's why I did that. And then laying down that nice smooth Luan base, underlayment rather, was just to make absolutely certain that it stayed nice and smooth. And I, like I said, didn't need to, I didn't want to have a caster on the table saw or something get stuck in a knot and create a divot, or, find an edge that I didn't belt sand down. So, okay, let's see. Holy cow, Lewis Denton, thank you very much for the super sticker. I certainly appreciate that. Let me get to, okay, you have a question here that's not related to the shop. It is, I'm tiling a 72-inch by 9-inch sign. Wow. If you overlap the tiles, are you subject to misaligned diagonal vectors where the tiles intersect? It depends on how far you overlap the two. If you are accurate in your X, Y zeroing after you push through, if you're accurate in that, you shouldn't have to overlap the tiles. I understand some people want to do that because there is a possibility of leaving a ridge behind where the two are supposed to meet. But if you stay square on that, let's say you overlap them 1/4 of an inch. As long as you stay square in Y when you push through, I'm assuming that you're pushing through front to rear. As long as you stay square on Y, you should be good. You are subject to misaligned diagonal vectors, but no more than a vertical or horizontal vector. It would just be more apparent with a horizontal vector, if that makes any sense. Just be very, very, very attentive and be very focused when you push through. Shove it forward to cut the next tile, and you should be all right. So, and another thing is to make that, I would make that overlap as small as I could, just to, it's easier to hide if you overlap by, let's say, 1/8 of an inch, it's easier to hide a discrepancy there than it is something that's 1 inch wide. An inch wide misalignment, it's just boom. It's easier to hide something that's just, fractionally misaligned. So I hope that helps. So let's see. Let's get back up here close to the top and come down and try to get them in kind of sort of order. Okay, thanks everybody who told me no, you couldn't hear the rain. I'm still trying to figure out what you can hear and what you can't hear. Like, I don't have the controller turned on or the computer turned on for the CNC. I should have, to find out if that carried through. I'll do that next week. So let's see here. Brooks Martin wants to know, Shop Shed looks incredible. Thanks very much. I notice you have two 220 volt AC receptacles. I understand one for the CNC machine, the other your saw. I have three 220 volt receptacles here. One right in front of me is 30 amp, 220 volt, 240 volt actually. And one of the upgrades I plan on doing next year is I'm switching over to an air-cooled spindle and getting my router out of the CNC. So I tried to future-proof as much as possible. So I have one 30 amp circuit here. The one you saw closest to the doors up front, that's a 20 amp circuit. That's for the table saw. And then I have a 30 amp circuit right about there, maybe about here. And that is for a tool that I plan on purchasing next year from a friend who has one for sale. So there are, like I said, I try to future-proof as much as possible. And that's why I spent so much time, effort, and energy on making electrical chases. Because another one of the updates and modifications I plan on making next year is I'm going to build a lean-to off of the back outside, and that's going to house my dust collector and my compressor. So I will have to run power, because right now I don't have any wiring run for that at all, because I haven't decided on those tools yet. But I've got to run wiring back and then through that wall back there, probably a 30 amp 240 volt circuit for the compressor. I'm not certain on the dust collector yet, because I haven't decided which way I'm going to go on dust collection. But by pulling down these panels up here and then those panels on the back wall, I can just run my wiring straight through and get it all set and then put those panels back up. And I don't have a lot of fuss and feathers, nothing really to worry about on that score. So I say another tool that I'm buying, I'm not ready to disclose that yet, just in case it doesn't go through. So, Brooke says, wow, 200 amp service. No, 125 amp service. It's, but I still will never use it all. I mean, it's more than I need. It's more than some houses in this area have. I mean, I know plenty of houses around here that are still on 100 amp service, but I've got 220 here, and it's run straight to the meter, off of the box on the meter itself. So we have 200 amp in the house and then 125 amp out here. And I've got two GFCI protected all-weather outlets, covered all-weather outlets outside. So one on the front and one on the side. So I've got plenty of power here. But again, I was trying to future-proof, because Lord knows what's going to happen down the road. I mean, so let's see. Dances with Aardvark says, so you have a breaker board in the shop? Yes, sir. I have a 125 amp panel. I'm looking at it right now. I could, I cannot quite reach it and touch it, but it's boom. Go back to, I think, number 2, maybe number 3 was the electrical install of the shop shed. This is episode 10. So I don't remember now if it was number 2, number 3, or number 4. But yeah, I trenched it in, ran it all underground. Bob Lee, who is out there in the chat right now, he was my electrical guru. He guided me through everything. Then I had a professional electrician come in and do the final hookup in the panel and out on the meter, and worked perfect. But yes, I have a 125 amp circuit breaker board right here, almost right next to me. So let's see. Let me go back up here. Eric, you might never go in the house again. Oh, yes, I will. There is no plumbing in here and no cooking facility in here. So you can bet I will go back in the house. Here in Oregon, because of the land use laws, Because I have electricity out here, I cannot have plumbing. If I have both, it becomes a dwelling. And because of our land use laws, we can only have one single family dwelling per lot. There are exceptions, but the permitting process is a nightmare and I don't qualify for it. So it's basically a temporary thing. What we call a mother-in-law residence is not the politically correct term anymore. You can put one in, you can build one if you can show a medical need for one. But once that person moves on to another place, you can take that however you'd like. That residence has to come down. The laws for the entire state say one single family residence per residential lot. It's a pain. So you can have electricity or you can have plumbing, but you can't have both. Not without getting your zoning changed, and that's an entirely different process. I used to sell real estate, so if you can't tell. Let's see. Robin wants to know, are those mats anti-gravity? Not that I have seen. Not that I have seen. Nothing is hovering above the ground, thankfully. So, shoo. I got to give another shout out to Gale Construction. This spray foam insulation is absolutely fantastic in that I have a little 1500 watt quartz heater off here to the side, and I have one of those little 900 watt oil filled radiator heaters over here on this end, and I turn them both on at the same time. After 20 minutes, I shut the quartz heater completely off, which is why you don't hear a fan. And I have the oil heater running at half, and it's hot in here. I mean, it'll run you out. If I wasn't in the middle of this, I would go shut it off, but I'll shut it off in a minute. Let's see. There were a couple of questions up here. Go back and find it. Ayal Peleg had a question about leveling the table, and I wanted to get to it. There it is. Ayal Peleg says, I'm a bit puzzled about what you said about leveling the CNC. Is it not enough that the gantry is square to the surface? It is enough. The thing is, as I said, I built this router in the other shed on that concrete floor. So it was built and leveled to that floor so that, and like I said, it doesn't have to be 100% perfectly level, but you don't want the table racked and twisted or anything like that. So I built it as level as I could, which made surfacing the spoil board that much easier. Well, when I moved it in here onto this flatter floor, all of the problems with that concrete floor in there and all the, the uneven surface of that concrete floor translated into this CNC. The table is now sitting raised up in the front and kind of twisted off to one side, so that if I did try to surface the spoil board so that the gantry is square to the surface, or the travel of the router is square to the surface, it would dig way down in this front left corner. So I want to try to lower that down to where it's more or less flat, and then remove that twist from the table. Now, the gantry does have to be square to the surface, and that's where tramming comes in. And I've already done one video on that where I used a little homemade gauge and homemade holder and a dial indicator. But I've since bought another tool, and I'm going to show that in the next video for folks who want to invest a little money in that tool. So, but flattening the table, leveling the table, and then squaring up the router / spindle so that it's cutting square are two different operations. And and need to have the table more or less level first. Now, let me throw a caveat here. This is for a wood router. And what I mean is a router that's mainly going to be used for carving on wood, foam, things like that. Machining metal is a whole nother animal. Machining metal, you have to set up a lot better than you do for wood because the tolerances are much, much, much tighter. I mean, even if you're just going to cut out aluminum parts, the tolerances are much tighter. I don't need 4-digit accuracy when I'm cutting wood. Heck, I'm used to furniture and cabinet shops where you have a 1/16 inch builder's tolerance. That's what filler strips are for. But machining metal, you need to be a lot more accurate than that. You do need everything perfectly level and dead square because there's less room for error. Here, with carving on wood, wood moves. So if I cut something with a 1/1000th of an inch tolerance, just the act of adding wood glue to that, the moisture from that wood glue is going to cause the wood to swell more than that 1/1000th. So, I don't need that 100% dead on accurate of a tram, but I also don't want any shingling, which is where the bit is not sitting level with the cutting surface. It's kind of cocked to one side or another, leaving ridges and grooves. I don't want any of that on my surfacing, but it doesn't have to be laser line perfect either. So, because I'm going to go back and sand it, which is going to remove any of that 4-digit accuracy anyway. So, okay, let's see. Go back up here and unhighlight that. I hope that answers that, IL. And yes, Eric Girth is right here. The gantry has to stay square, and that's the key. So, and that's not an issue. This Gatton CNC is just, it's dead on. Okay, let's see here. Let me get down here. I could claim depression. Whoops. Could claim depression without a potty. Nah, the house is 10 steps away. I'm not worried about it. Okay, IL Peleg says, if you have 2 motors on Y, you also have to make sure that the 2 drives are in sync when running into their end stop. Yes, and that's one of the pre-running checks that I do. I bring the gantry as far forward as I can, shut off the controller so that I can move the the lead screws, and then measure. And, I've got my little machinist square here that I use to make sure that they are dead on up here and nice and square. And then I can turn the drive box back on and go from there. But yes, you just got to make that square. That's one of the things that I'm probably going to change and update is I want kind of an auto square so that I have right now I have a limit switch and homing switch up here on the front on that corner, but I do not have one here. That is on my controller software. That's my Y axis. This is my A axis slave. And so they move in conjunction with one another. But I would like to add another limit switch over here so that when I home, it automatically squares everything up. I just haven't done it. But that's another one of the little updates and upgrades that I'm going to do with the machine. So let's see here. Troy Pritchard says, I have a limit homing switch question. Can you run a shielded 4-wire cable left over from stepper motors to the XY limit switches instead of running 2 runs of cable to each set? Sure. You can use whatever wire you want. I just basically, let me back up on that. You can use whatever stranded wire you want because there is going to be movement and you don't want solid wire. You want to use stranded for strain relief. A solid wire keeps bending like that, eventually it's going to break. Where stranded is less likely to do that. If you're using 4-wire cable, to the XY limit switches instead of running 2 runs. You can, so long as they're within reach of each other, sure. Why not? The only thing to remember on shielded cable is the shielding wire around it. Just connect one end to ground. Don't connect both ends to ground, because that'll cause electrical gremlins that you'll chase for weeks and never think about it. Just connect one end of that shielding wire to ground, not the second one. So, but yeah, you can use all of that, as many of them as you want, especially on your, for instance, on the grounds. I have all of my grounds running to one terminal block under the center. Center of the table. It's underneath the middle on the framework, just before my control box, drive box down here. And I'll show that in a video. And I have one ground cable, ground wire rather, running from that terminal block down into the controller, so that there's one ground. I don't have 750 wires running into the controller box. I have one ground, and all of them are connected to that terminal block in the middle of the framing. Let's see. Okay. Wolfram Herzog says, oh yes, definitely add an in switch to the slave A axis. It increases the precision of the CNC significantly. Yeah. I've been running it this way for 3 years and I haven't really had an issue, but your point is well taken. And that's one of the reasons why I want to do that, is just, it's that one thing less that I have to really concern myself with. You know, I am completely and totally supported by checklists. I don't trust this memory for anything. I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So there's no way I'm going to remember every step out here. So I pull up my checklist on the computer and I make sure that, okay, that's part of the process before I home the machine, is I make sure that the gantry is square to the Y-axis. So by putting in that extra switch, that's just one less thing that I have to do. So let's see here. Okay, Leroy CNC and Woodworks, how you doing today? In VCarve Pro Preview Toolpath, can you have more than one material color? Not material color, but you can do another, a toolpath color. The only thing is, on the toolpath color, it has to be a solid color. So you can't like put walnut for the toolpath color. Let me get Aspire open here. Like a dummy, I forgot to load it up before I went live. And we'll go over here. Now, I don't have anything, a file open in Aspire. So we'll just kind of wing it here. And we'll do this. Get over here. It's talking about, Leroy is talking about over here in the preview toolpath. Come on, load up. There we go. This poor old laptop. I'm using version 11, so your preview may look a little bit different up in this area here. You can have multiple materials if you have multiple sheets. So you could have a material that is maple and on sheet 1, and then sheet 2 can be walnut. But as far as having both of those materials in the same preview, no. And the active sheet right now is sheet 1, and I can go in here and change the appearance to whatever. I change it to medium wood, or I can change it to a solid color by going back into here and then, you know, use solid color if I want to. Then I can select that color down here on this drop menu. Then click off down here. You can select a toolpath color. Now, again, I don't have a toolpath selected. And select down here. You can choose one of these solid colors here or come down to more colors. Oh, maybe you can. No, you can just select the red, blue, green. You can't add another wood preview out here. So you can select a solid color, but that's about it. So, like I said, no, you couldn't like have maple as your base and then add walnut later on. So, but shoot an email to Vectric and make that suggestion. They take those suggestions and add those in updates. And they take suggestions directly from us, the users, because we're the people that they want to keep happy. So shoot them an email, make that suggestion, and who knows, it may be in version 11.5. Seems to me that it would be fairly simple anyway. So, okay, Troy Pritchard wants to know, so you can ground the limit switches and the separ motors in the same spot. That's a different subject. I did not do that. Now, full disclosure, I still use the Xylatex drive box. So all of the motor grounding is done through that drive box. Personally, I would not, I would be kind of hesitant on grounding the stepper motors the same place I grounded the limit switches. I think you have to do that through the power supply for those motors, don't you? I'm not sure. Again, I use the Xylatex drive box, so I would think twice about that. So let's see here. And Wolfram Herzog adds, the resulting squares are much more precise with two end switches. Have just learned this on my new CNC build. Yeah, I can imagine it would be. And like I said, it's just one more layer of protection, I guess you could say. Knowing that those switches are both going to go off within tolerance. I mean, I don't know if you're using mechanical micro switches or if you're using proximity switches, but depending upon the tolerance of those switches themselves, you could get that dialed in pretty ding dong good. And, yeah, I can see how it would be more precise. Let's see here. John Thompson says, can you do an angle project, say 1 foot on one end and half a foot on the other end, and add text on it in Aspire? Yes, you can. And I did a video on that. Let me write it down. And that is using the distort tool. And I'll put a link to that video in the description of this video as soon as we're finished live. In fact, there are a couple of ways of doing that, of making a vector straight across and another one at an angle, and make the text follow that taper. I've done a couple of videos on that, and or use that as an example. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video as soon as we're done live here. But yes, it's very simple. So let's see. Okay, Wolfram says he uses proximity sensors. Yeah, I've not made that upgrade yet, but now that the expense of this shop shed is drawing to a close, that might be in my future, because right now I'm using the little micro switches. And it's funny, in a past life, I was a slot machine repairman, and these are the exact same micro switches I used to use. We used on slot machines for various, little switches in and out. And I had boxes of these things, and now I've got to buy them. It just seems, it's kind of like a carpenter who works for a living having to buy nails now. So let's see. Yeah, we've been on for about 45 minutes, so it's time to wrap this up. One last comment here. Eric Girth says, end all and be all I just would like to be in your new shop. Can't wait to see the new machining videos again. You have done it so well. Thank you very much. The next video may be the final shop shed build video. And after that, I'll start getting back into the machining thing, because I do plan on designing a project and then coming out here and cutting the project. There are a lot of questions about basic machine operations. I can't get too machine specific, but there are a lot of basic machine operation questions that people have been asking me, and I just haven't been able to get out to show them. And I want to do that. And I want to create projects, design a project one week, come out and cut it the next week, and get further into that. I have a lot of people to thank for this shop shed build. And that's going to be in the next video I do on the shop shed. But the number one group of people I want to thank for this is you. The people who come here to the live Q&A sessions, the people that watch the videos and have been watching since whenever you joined, the people who've been sharing my videos. I see them being shared on Facebook in groups, and I appreciate that. The people who have used the super stickers like Lewis did earlier today. Thank you again, Lewis. The people who have used the super chats, and the people who have clicked those donation links down there in the description. Without you guys, literally none of this would happen. None of it. It would have just been me paying somebody to build a shed and be done with it just so I could have it for myself. But by allowing me to share it with you all and your interest in it, that makes it all worthwhile. And without you guys, I couldn't have done any of this. So thank you very, very much. One last thing I'll say before we head out is, remember today, in a little more than an hour, 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, Michael Mazalik will be premiering his latest video on body parts in Aspire. And this week he's doing ears. And I know he said that eyes were probably the most difficult, but looking at all the various levels when it comes to ears, I'm very eager to see how he handles that. Whether it be in profile or just straight on or what have you, or even an oblique shot like so. I'm kind of eager to see how he does it. So there is a link to that premiere down in the description box of this video. So I hope to see you folks over there this afternoon as soon as we're done. Well, like I said, 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. If you have Aspire, you need to be watching this series, because I mean, he's going through and he's building a face, and I get questions on that all the time. This is an excellent series. So hope to see you over there. Thank you to everybody. Next week will be open Q&A, so get your CNC questions prepped and ready, and I'll do what I can. And after that, I don't know what I'm going to do. But let's just say have a happy Halloween, and have a safe Halloween. Those of you who have grandkids, have an awful lot of fun with them. That's the best time of the year for kids. This whole season coming up is. And other than that, y'all take care. I'll get those links in the description just as quick as I find them. And y'all have a great day. Thanks very much for joining me.